Greetings. You are watching the program on anti-corruption investigations, Our Money. My name is Bihus. Lustration. Everyone forgot about it already, but in 2014, after the revolution, it was a big, loud process. A lot of people think the lustration was a failure. I don't agree. I'd rather characterize it as a could have been better, because really, to vet thousands of officials of the Yanukovych's administration, including the top officials, is not a bad result, but that's thousands of tens of thousands. Now the lustrated officials are getting their own back. The first case is the reinstatement of a lustrated prosecutor in his office through the court. Everyone agreed that according to the law, he had to be lustrated. However, the judges just don't like this law. Next, Maksym Opanasenko will expose the absurd and tell us that the prosecutor will get his salary compensated for all the lost years. 1st of December 2013, Kyiv, Bankova Street. The first big clash between Euromaidan activists and the law enforcers. The protesters retreated, the police attacked and detained. One of the detained is Vladislav Zaharovko, then a driver from Brovary, now an ATO fighter. They laid me face down. About 3 to 4 people approached and started to beat me with batons, hands, feet. They damaged a lot of things. They broke my ribs. Vladislav's eye was severely damaged by the beating, but instead of a hospital, he was served with charges. The investigator entered and gave me a stack of testimonies that I had distributed flags on Maidan, called for an overthrow of the regime, even that I had grenades. They wrote an interrogation protocol and wanted me to sign it. I refused. In a couple of days, the prosecutor offered Vladislav a deal, only a fine and then freedom if he pleaded guilty. Everyone was against me pleading guilty. My wife was, my lawyer too. The circumstances decided. Vladislav's wife got hospitalized. He had children at home. He couldn't afford to spend time in jail. He signed the confession. He knew that my wife was in a hospital, he knew my circumstances, and he used them to pressure me. The prosecutor who proposed the deal was Alexander Kuzmenko. He is the son of Petro Kuzmenko, the ex-MP from the Fatherland Party, who switched to the Party of Regions in 2010. He began work in prosecution in 2004. During the Revolution of Dignity, he was in charge of the Purge district of Kyiv. Right after the Euromaidan, he was transferred to work in Odesa. That's where the lustration caught up with him in a year. I consider myself illegally fired from my position. Throughout the next 3 years, the prosecutor got a lawyer license, opened a law firm, made jokes about the Maidan activists, congratulated the fugitive prosecutor general Viktor Pshonka on his birthday, and missed his prosecutor's job. It's all on his Facebook page. Also, he was actively suing his lustration. The first instance made a decision which was contrary to my point of view. They said I was legally fired. I appealed it. In April this year, the Odesa Administrative Court of Appeal made a historic decision. Kuzmenko was reinstated in his office. Even more, they decided to pay him his salary for all 3 years of his forced absence, which amounted to $11,500. But the greatest advantage for the prosecutor was that his 10-year ban to work at state institutions was lifted. The lustration department of the Ministry of Justice said that Kuzmenko was the first one to be reinstated, despite fulfilling all the criteria to get lustrated. The decision of the court to reinstate him raises a lot of questions. We've got some too. We went to Odesa to ask them. Kuzmenko was reinstated by the Judicial Board of the Odesa Administrative Court of Appeal. Among them were Alexander Kravets and Stepan Dumushi. Judge Domushi said that he reinstated the prosecutor because he deemed the law on lustration to be unconstitutional. Currently, the new revision of the Code of Administrative Proceedings allows the court to not use a law if it deems it to be unconstitutional. Judge Kravitz also says that everything was according to the law. You don't just have to occupy a certain position to fall under the lustration criteria. That's the Venice Commission's opinion. However, the Constitutional Court didn't deem the law on lustration to be unconstitutional. It hasn't evaluated it at all yet. Thus, the arguments in favor of the reinstatement are rather subjective. The reinstated prosecutor Kuzmenko didn't appear at his office in Odesa yet. However, he doesn't just rant on Facebook during his time in Kyiv. Here's Kuzmenko showing off his Jaguar going over 200 kilometers per hour. And photos of his villa. Officially, he has neither the Jaguar nor the villa. They are registered to Irina Kuzmenko. The prosecutor didn't mention her in his declarations, but earlier they were registered in the same apartment. This is a private cottage community near Kyiv. Here's the mansion registered to Irina Kuzmenko. The landscape is very similar to the one on the prosecutor's photos. The woman got both the car and the mansion in summer 2015, almost immediately after Kuzmenko's lustration. All this could have become additional evidence for the court, the decision of which to reinstate him looks more and more controversial. This is how Kuzmenko explains it. During the time of my last declaring period, this information didn't have to be declared. There might be another reason for the judge's decision. Last year, Kravitz and Domushi applied for the Supreme Court, but were met with a complete examination by activists. The Complete Integrity Council prepared reports about the judges, who fell short of the Public Council's criteria for integrity and professional ethics. There were a lot of concerns. Leonid Maslov was the member of the Public Integrity Council who wrote the report on Kravitz. He says that there were a lot of questions about the judge's property. A person who got an apartment while living in a 450 square meter house got an apartment for people in need of improved living conditions. He immediately privatized and sold the apartment bought by the state, by all of us, by taxpayers. Meanwhile, the judge with his wife and mother owns these buildings on Lufstorf Road in Odessa. The family also owns two sizable buildings at a seaside resort on Dacha Kovalevskoho Street, and at least 3 cars, a Hyundai Sonata, a Hyundai iX35, and a Volkswagen Touareg. Maslov says that either the judge or his family are hiding something. How do he and his mother maintain the property? Domushi raises similar questions. But the main issue was about one of the decisions made during the Euromaidan. In 2013, Domushi and Kravitz didn't allow an appeal against the factual ban on Euromaidan in Odessa. Then, at the end of 2013, a court of first instance banned any peaceful assemblies in Odessa. This decision was appealed. Domushi and Kravitz received it and didn't allow it. That is, they left the ban on peaceful assemblies in place. The reason which the appeal contained, put forth by the appellant in order to recognize the court decision as void. Let me stress that not to cancel, but to consider it void. Those reasons weren't stipulated by the law. That's why we didn't allow the appeal. We couldn't cross the procedural lines. And you see, I understood that there might be some risks, and the issue was solved not very well, so to say. But working with a procedural issue, I had to act as a law professional. If the court doesn't have the right to void a ruling, it has to refuse.
Для визнання постанови нечинною та закриття суд мав відмовляти.
The judges who turned a blind eye to a ban on peaceful assemblies and failed a check by the Public Integrity Council reinstated a prosecutor who jailed a Euromaidan activist. And they did it in a cynical way, stating that the law on lustration was unconstitutional. The Department of Lustration says that Kuzmenko is the first, but may not be the last. He's the first to win, but there are a lot of prosecutors' lawsuits at court. Some are still being processed, while the others are put on hold until the Constitutional Court decides on the law of lustration. How many cases like this does the department have on its hand? The department alone has around 60 cases like this. That's only the appeals against the usage of the law on lustration. Alexander Kuzmenko says he's really happy for being reinstated. However, he's not in a hurry to start working again. He thinks about the future. As of the 18th of May 2018, I decided to refrain from any actions to fulfill the court's decision. I do not vie for any governmental positions considering the current situation in the country.
Я не претендую на посаду в будь-яких державних органах України. Знову ж таки, з огляду на ситуацію в Україні, що має місце сьогодні. Разом з тим, я не виключаю, що...
However, I do not rule this out. If I find people working in the governmental bodies whose management style, work style, and approaches I like, maybe I will ask to join a certain team.
Підходом я, можливо, буду просити приєднатись до тієї чи іншої команди.
Despite not being perfect, the law on lustration ruled out the people who loyally served the previous president, including by jailing peaceful protesters. Now they are getting their own back. Since we're already talking about prosecutors, let's take a look at how they get free land. I mean, how the prosecutors fight against illegally handed out land. I mean, that's basically the same thing. On the eve of the resort season, our colleagues from the Mykolaiv Center for Investigative Reporting went to the Kobleve resort. Some people sunbathe on the sand, while others lay their foundations. And when the local prosecutors came to return the land to state property, they found their colleagues there, and their friends. Sometimes even distant relatives. The resort village of Kobleve, one of the most popular tourist destinations in Ukraine. The sandy beaches don't only attract tourists, though, they attract law enforcers as well, because there's a lot of money to be made. I've worked hard since childhood. If you had only known how much hard work I had to do to be where I am now. And I worked hard. I have a lot of bonuses, you see. That's it. The local village council eagerly hands out the precious land. The prosecutor's office prefers to ignore that, especially since the land became the private property of certain officials, including those of the said offices. After the boundaries of the Kobleve village were extended and the control over that land was given to the village council's chairman, that's when the large-scale development began, right on the shore. And in the zones prohibited by the water and the land codes. I'm not even talking about the so-called seashore buffer zone, where any reconstruction is prohibited. The Kobleve entrepreneur Boris Svierzhevsky is outraged at the local authorities handing out protected land. That includes the recreational zones, forests, the sea buffer zone, and even the beaches. They were, of course, handed out with gross violations of both the water and the land codes. For the last couple of years, the village council carved out hundreds of plots like this, most of them for free, at least for the local budget. The real prices are pretty steep. The market price for 100 square meters of land on the Black Sea shore costs more than $15,000. All this is not only illegal, but also harms Kobleve's tourist potential. There is less and less room for the tourists. Lavish mansions are put up all over the beaches and the pine forest. Tall fences protect them from ordinary people. Only 5 years ago, this land was open to holiday goers. Kobleve is a popular resort, both among tourists and law enforcers. Prosecutors from Mykolaiv and Odesa got these land plots right by the sea. There's a coincidence. The prosecutor's office doesn't demand their return. Mykola Stoyanov, the ex-prosecutor of the Odesa Oblast, built his mansion almost in the sea. The pine forest is ripe with cottages of the Odesa prosecutor, Halne Stoyanova Yurko, the head of the Berdyansk prosecutor's office, Volodymyr Rudi, the head of the Mykolaiv department of the SBU, Alexei Liak, and many others. Why are the local authorities so careless about the land? The Kobleve village head is on sick leave, so we had to talk to Svetlana Toloko, the acting village head. The official says that money wins, and she doesn't seem to have a problem with it. The deputy Isman has a plot, I have a plot, there are local residents who want to have one, but they don't. Is the deputy Toloko any worse than an MP or a prosecutor? People with money go to the Odessa Court of Appeal, then win the cases there, then they go to Kiev, and the people whose money wins set matters straight. The Mykolaiv local prosecutor's office is tasked with defending state interest and returning the Kobleve land. It's headed by Dmytro Levitsky. At the beginning of 2018, the prosecutor's office reported that they had returned 13 land plots in Kobleve recreation zone of a total area of 1.3 hectares to the state. However, it turned out that they are very selective in the land returned. They noticed the plots whose owners are ordinary people or local deputies, and they ignore those owned by prosecutors, SBU employees, and other officials. Well, the prosecutor's office reluctantly cancels some deeds, or at least tries to. I've been suing some for 2 years already. Meanwhile, they review and cancel some minor deeds, yes. And the prosecutor's office then reports about returning some land. While the prosecutor's office reports about the returned hectares, the protected zones get built up. Can you tell me what is being built here? Here? A house, a cultural center. How can we explain the PO's blindness? Maybe it has something to do with its head? Dmytro Levitsky isn't a new man in Koblevo. Even before the so-called prosecution reform, he was tasked with developing the local beaches by the Berezin prosecutor's office. In 2015, he was the first to pass the lustration check, get promoted, and head to the Mykolaiv local prosecutor's office. We don't supervise. We only file lawsuits or participate in cases where the state's interests were harmed. And if the prosecutor's office knows about this... The prosecutor and the local government are linked by relatives and business. They are joined by this unfinished Kobleve Recreation Center. The center is constructed by the Ashlar firm. It is owned by Levitsky's mother. The partner of the prosecutor's mother is the mother of Alexei Asupenko, a local deputy. Asupenko himself is a distant relative of Kobleve village head Volodymyr Panich. The deputy Asupenko has 38 land plots in Kobleve. He got all of them in the last decade. The PO doesn't have any problems with the latifundist deputy. How can the subordinate descendants of Levitsky have any problems with the deputy Ostupenko. Their mothers share a tourist business. What connection do you have to the head of the Mykolaiv local prosecutor's office, Dmitry Levitsky? There's none. Is it true that your mother shares a business with Dmitro's mother? Haven't heard about that? Do you know that they also own land plots in Kobleve? Do they? Their company does. The PP Ashlar. I don't know. Whose business is it really? The mother's or the son's? The prosecutor Levitsky's mother, who owns a share of the business, lives in Vradivka. But she buys hundreds of square meters in Mykolaiv and gives them to her prosecutor's son. May come in handy. The prosecutor himself officially owns only a Lada Priora car. Everyone has their fate. My parents worked really hard. I've worked hard since childhood. If you had only known how much hard work I had to do to be where I am now. However, the prosecutor lives in this riverside mansion in Mykolaiv, which is registered to his mother. I wanted to ask if Mr. Dmitro is here right now. He's not. But he lives here, right? Can I find him here? Well, yes. The next morning, Levitsky's car flew by us near this building. It's interesting that not a single of his declarations mentions him using this house. Although his mother bought it at the beginning of 2016, right when her son moved to Mykolaiv to work. The prosecutor's declaration says that he lived in this flat the whole time. It's also his mother's, but we met some tenants there. Do you live here? Yes. Is this apartment 74? Yes. Do you rent it? Why do you ask? Levitsky didn't deny living in the Riverside house. He says he has recently moved to his mother's house. For the time, his mother's flat is renovated. I temporarily left that flat 3 months ago because that flat is getting renovated. This is about the flat where we met the tenants. Not very convincing. Moreover, his mother Lydia doesn't mention any renovations, and her version also fails to assuage our doubts. The prosecutor's mother says that at the beginning of the year, she suddenly decided to move her son to the house she bought last year. I told him, why? I want to give you a house. And my son went there in January. I gave it to my child. What? I don't have the right to give it to him? The prosecutor's mother also gave her son a 2017 Volkswagen Passat, right after she bought it herself. That's normal when parents do this for their children, isn't it? I'm sure that when you visit your mother, she gives you conserves and clothes, doesn't she? The prosecutor's mother buys land not only in Mykolaiv Oblast, but in Poltava as well. That's where her second son, Vyacheslav, lives. He was also a prosecutor until recently. Lydia Levitska registered as a sole trader in 2007. Her main business is several shops in Vradivka. They must be extremely profitable to allow her to invest in the construction of a resort facility, buy up land and cars for her children, and even a gas station in Voznesensk city near Mykolaiv. Or maybe the property the mother doesn't use wasn't bought with her money. And while the number of the prosecutor's mother's assets increases, the amount of free land on the Kobleva seashore decreases. According to many people, businessmen, etc., the head of the first prosecutor's office has shady deals with the seashore business. If we want people to see that the law is there, that's what we need. Then we need to make articulate decisions according to the legislation. Then the people would trust the authorities. Well, now there's only one way. You go and you pay. Almost a half of the Kobleva beach is covered in officials' mansions. Instead of being a comfortable tourist destination, Kobleva is transforming into a private settlement of local law enforcers.
Ну що ж, на сьогодні все.
That's all for today. You can watch and comment on any of our episodes on our YouTube channel. Write us on social media, Facebook, Twitter, hell, we even have Instagram. If you have an interesting topic, better write us an email. See you on air in a week. You watched Dennis Bihus and the program Our Money. Goodbye.
З вами був Денис Бігус та програма «Наші гроші». До зустрічі.